Welcome to the 4 Habits podcast, where we help you build relationships that thrive at home, at work, and in life. We're Dr. Andrea and John Taylor-Cummings, and every week we bring you actionable insights to create meaningful connections and lasting success. So let's dive in.
We're looking forward to a really inspiring conversation. We know we need to push past our limiting beliefs, but this is more about connecting with the power on the inside and learning how to crown ourselves. I know you want to know more, but you have to hang on a minute. With us in the studio today is Kimberly Spencer. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here on the 4 Habits podcast.
Well, we're looking forward to learning how to crown ourselves. But before we dive into that, as the audience knows, we need to give you your proper introduction, right? So John's going to take us through the bio.
My bit, and for the audience who are used to hearing me do this, will recognize my voice is sounding slightly different here today.
Yes, more husky, more sexy.
More husky, some would say more sexy. But that's because I've had COVID. I haven't had it before. It took me 6 years to have COVID 2019. But anyway, so if you hear me sounding a bit raspy, I'll take all the sympathy I can get. But anyway, let's do the bio here.
Thankfully, he's passed it.
I passed it. I'm clear now. I'm all tested, clear, and all good. But my voice, I think I did so much coughing, my throat is still saying what was going on here.
Yeah, very husky voice.
Anyway, we're through it. All right, so let's do this. So Kimberly Spencer is a high-performance coach dedicated to empowering purpose-driven individuals to transcend self-imposed limitations and craft lives of authenticity and impact. As the founder of crownyourself.com, she guides visionary leaders in shedding internal barriers to realize their fullest potential in both personal and professional realms. Kimberly's method is distinctive in its holistic integration of mindset and body awareness. Her trauma-informed approach acknowledges how past experiences can influence present behaviors and emotions. Mm-hmm. By incorporating somatic practices, that's techniques that focus on the body's sensations and movements, she facilitates clients in releasing stored tensions and fostering a deeper connection between mind and body. Through her best-selling publications, her TEDx presentations, and transformative coaching programs, Kimberly inspires individuals to rewrite their narratives, embrace their inherent worth, and lead lives aligned with their true selves. Her mission transcends traditional success metrics. It's about guiding others to crown themselves, to claim, own, and expand their unique power from within. So, Kimberly, you talk about crowning yourself as a mindset. I'm sure you're not talking about standing in front of the mirror and putting on an actual crown.
No, we don't know.
I'm not impressed yet. You're more. I started out where I came up with the idea of crown yourself. I had just been bought out of my e-commerce company. I had a successful exit, though at the time I didn't see it as successful. I've been the president of this e-commerce company. We'd scaled a backstretching device, brought it to market. We had just pitched it the first round of Shark Tank auditions. We'd gotten it into New York Times Square on all the billboards. We'd gotten it into all the major magazines. And we were growing this business, me and my business partner. And 3 months before I was about to get married, my business partner says, "I want to buy you out." And I was like, what? And what I didn't realize was, or what I had been oblivious to, was the relationship with my business partner was on very different values. And it's not to say that his were bad and mine were good, or mine were bad and his were good. It's just they were different. Yeah. And your values are the subconscious structure of your business. And I wish I had me as a coach now to be able to go back and coach me then to see where there were the misalignments in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And because of that differentiation of values, for example, I grew up with entrepreneur parents. I'm a second generation entrepreneur. I saw my dad start out small and scrappy with a tow truck that he borrowed from his dad to build their arborist business in LA. And over the course of 30 years, they built it to a multi-million-dollar business while my dad was a highly functioning alcoholic. So wow. I saw what they did in 30 years and I said, well, what could I do in 10? Mm-hmm. But that methodology of small and scrappy, and my mom, when I was a baby was pushing me in the stroller, passing out flyers for their business. So I was very much of that entrepreneurial mindset in that startup mentality. My
Mhm.
business partner, we had capital, we had some funding behind it. And so there were certain decisions that were being made that were very different from my small and scrappy startup
Mhm.
ideology, which is how I started my first business when I was 19, which was freelancing as a Pilates instructor. I eventually ended up growing that to having a private studio in Los Angeles. And that was what led me to becoming, I was initially brought on to be a consultant for this project and this product. And I saw it and I said, I can sell that. And I said, I don't want to be a consultant. I want to be president. I want to be a partner. I brought in investors, my parents. Which they did when I got bought out. I did give them a 15% return on their money. So
There you go.
There you go. Everybody's happy.
everybody was happy, except for me, because
Yeah.
I saw that as a failure. I
Mm.
saw it not as a successful exit, but I saw it as I had lost my business. I had
Wow.
lost this thing that I put time, energy, effort into for 2 years of my life. And my health also went downhill because I was waking up at 3 a.m. with night sweats, just fearing a customer email or red lines through my marketing copy and things like that. And the relationship with my business partner ended up splitting, obviously.
Mhm.
And I'd never dealt with lawyers up until that point. And so I didn't realize they don't send you the nicest emails
No.
when you're not, when they're on the other side.
Yep.
And so that was a 3-month learning experience. We signed the buyout agreement 3 weeks before I got married. I jetted off to my honeymoon and I looked at my husband on our little couch in Italy going like, what do I do when we get back?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
And we were brainstorming as entrepreneurial couples do on your honeymoon. And and I thought of all of the holistic passions that I had had. I'd been a pageant girl when I was younger. I'd been Miss Congeniality. And that was such a pivotal moment for me of claiming the power over my body because I'd healed a 10-year battle with bulimia with no psychological or medical intervention. And that moment in Miss California when I stood in front of 4,000 people in a bikini when I was 22 was I realized I didn't need the validation of a whole bunch of faceless judges who I couldn't see from the shadows anymore because I had crowned myself within my body. And
Mhm.
so I realized I wanted this mentality of crowning yourself and really claiming your power to be in a holistic realm of success so your business does not come at the expense of your relationships and it doesn't come at the expense of your body, that
Yeah.
you are able to sustain high performance in all areas of your life. And so I leaped off the couch and said, crown yourself. My husband says, what's that? I said, that's the name of my company. He said, great. What do you do? I said, I don't know.
Figure it out.
So
That's the
that was
first
the
thing.
beginning start of my journey to learning what the coaching world was, to entering into coaching. Fast forward, I got certified in NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, certified high performance coaching, bank sales methodology, and somatic breath work to bring in all of these different modalities into how to look at success
Yeah.
and how to measure it and how to conquer and move through the limiting beliefs that happen. And I was doing this while with my first child. So in essence, I was raising twins, a business and a baby at the same time.
Yeah.
And now he's almost 8 and my business is almost 9. And so it's just been this beautiful journey of facing myself in this sort of spherical way of the lessons that I learned in one area of life, I'm seeing get to be applied into others.
Yeah. And into other people's lives as a result, which is,
Mm-hmm.
I can just, feel the energy and the passion and the enthusiasm for the work that you do, which
But
is
I
amazing.
I joked about it at the beginning in terms of standing in front of the mirror and dressing up and putting a crown on. But actually, what you're talking about here is ascribing that value to yourself in terms of saying maybe I'm a prince or a queen or a king or what have you. I am that value.
I'm worth it.
Let's step up and
Well, I mean, I think of that terminology of the queen of, if you think of a monarch like the king or the queen,
yeah.
they are raised from birth with the expectation that they are to lead. They
Yeah.
are raised from birth, not with people saying, "Oh, I doubt if you're capable,"
Yeah.
Yeah.
but they're trained, they're surrounded by mentors, they are guided, they are expected. And they also, in the monarchy realms, there is a belief that that is their divine appointment.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, what if your purpose, that thing that you're creating in this world, the roles that you play, whether it's as a mother, as a business owner, as a career professional, as a CEO, what if those roles were divinely appointed to you
Mm.
and you fully embraced and own, like, you are in that space at the right place in the right time, because that is where you're supposed to be? And what if, this is crazy, as a culture, we actually said, yes, you are meant to lead.
Yeah.
Like, and
Indeed.
so, because so often when we have a dream, people can come along as we're growing up and say, oh, that's not realistic. Or, oh, wait until you're older, you'll grow out of that dream of wanting to be an astronaut or a rocket scientist or, a princess. And I was like, well, I didn't grow out of the dream of being a princess. I mean, I did go to school technically with Meghan Markle. Like, well, she went to my alma mater for high
Oh, there
school.
you go.
but I did create a business around this concept of a queendom. And
Yeah.
so it's not exactly in the form that I had when I was 5. Like, I didn't run off and marry a prince, but I married my king,
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
amazing, and he's a wonderful provider for our family and our little homestead on our farm.
Yeah. So, and that's just such a powerful point, because quite often when we dare to share our dreams, it's like the subtext of what people say, the way they say you're not being realistic. What they're actually saying is, wait until you've been hurt in life, like I've been hurt in life, and then you'll have a more realistic dream. So you talk about a trauma-informed approach to dealing with the limiting beliefs that we have, and you link that to somatic practices, what we sense in the body and so on. Tell us a bit about how you take people on that journey from the comments they might have heard or things they've experienced to limit their beliefs through this journey of helping them crown themselves.
Mm. I think the power is, we so often our bodies recognize things before our brain does. And
Mm.
in most of the Western culture, intellect is praised, having the right answer is praised, versus trusting that intuitive knowing when's like, no, that's wrong. Something's off here. And
Mhm.
55% of communication, according to the Moravian communication model, is physiological. And
Yeah.
that also means internal communication, interoception, being able to perceive what are those messages that your intuition is saying when everything else consciously makes sense, but your intuition goes, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I had this moment. I remember sitting in the Starbucks with my former business partner right before we signed the agreement to go into business together. And we were having a conversation. There were a couple things that were said that I was like, I had that intuitive nudge. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense because everything on paper is lining up perfectly. Exactly. Like, this is such a huge opportunity for me, for my career. And I ignored that intuition, went ahead anyways. And 2 years later, had my hair falling out from stress and and
Wow.
eventually was bought out, which gave me freedom, which I'm so grateful for. And I'm so grateful for that experience because now I've been able to guide clients, like you said, Andrea, through
Mhm.
their buyout processes, employee issues, etc. But our intuition, our interoception, our body has so much wisdom in it that is very much ignored.
Mhm.
And that in some ways we're conditioned to ignore it because we're not asked, like, how does that feel in your body? Because emotions are scary.
Yeah. But we're not
Emotions
allowed to
are,
talk about that.
ooh, yeah, no, big anger, guilt, shame, fear. Ooh, no, like, let's just pretend those don't exist. Let's swipe it under the rug. And I think that in that way, my childhood was my best training ground because that's what I saw growing up. And so now I have those gifts and those assets from that training ground to be able to take to my clients.
Mhm.
And so first I listen to what they're saying and I listen to what they're not saying, what they're saying behind what they're saying.
Mhm.
So often our language dictates our reality. And I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, I was having a conversation with a client and she was sharing some things about that underlying. I hear the belief of guilt. I hear the belief of being deserving to be punished. I hear the belief of the just world bias, which is our subconscious minds, our little toddlers inside going, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. And so we're trying to make sense of something that really isn't fair. It sucks. Like there are certain things in life that you can't, if you spiral down the wide tunnel, you can find every reason, every excuse, every story, but do those stories serve? Like, are those stories actually serving? So I listen for the stories of what's being said. And then I also listen for like what's coming up in the body. And one of the questions that I ask my clients before every session is like, what's been going on in your body? And so often there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. And when we can look at the body and just see, okay, there's some shoulder pain and it's on the left side, or there is some hand pain. And so what does the shoulder do? Like if we look at the body, because the subconscious mind runs the body, if we look at the body from a holistic standpoint and look at the functionality of how this problem is presenting itself in the body, it can give us signs to things, to beliefs, to thoughts, to habits that are not serving us. Now, you may have pulled your shoulder in a workout. That's possible. And your shoulder may be shouldering the burden. Like there are these linguistic cliches that we hear throughout time that actually we feel in the body, like heavy is the head that wears the crown. That's a big one I see a lot with leaders, where there's neck pain, there's back pain coming into play because heavy is the head that wears the crown. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with leadership. And so, and same with I had one client who was having symptoms of carpal tunnel. And I just looked at her and I said, well, what are you having trouble grasping? And she was like, she paused and she's like, oh my God, I'm having trouble grasping that. And she was having a challenge with her daughter at the time. And she was having trouble grasping how she was going to do it all, how she was going to run her business, grow it to that multi-million-dollar level, and navigate parenting her teenage daughter, who was at that time very deeply struggling with mental health, as so many kids are these days.
Indeed, yeah.
Exactly.
And so like when we can look at the body and so a lot of times when we see the body will, like, we want to default, oh, I just need to strengthen it. I need to do a thing. And that's our doer mentality of like, I'm going to fix it. Let me strap on my tool belt. But what if we just listen to the messages that the body is trying to communicate? Because that's how the subconscious mind is speaking to you. It's saying there's something up. I'm going to put it right here. Let's explore. And what if, and I'm not saying don't go see a medical professional, like definitely do. And there are other communications that the body can share with you. And what if you just opened yourself up to those possibilities?
Wow. I mean, inspiring just to hear it, and kind of scary, but very real. If we pause long enough in this busy, always on world, pause long enough to listen to our body. But then how do you do it? Especially if listening to it might throw up stuff from the past that you haven't quite dealt with yet. And that's throwing, how do you go on that
But
journey?
even before we come to the listening to it, but I was just wondering, have you seen any difference in the
I know what you're going to
clientele?
ask.
Go on, what
Between men and women,
you got
right?
it,
I
you
know
got
what
it.
you're
You're
going
going ahead. Only because a lot of the guys, quite often when we get into emotions and sort of touchy-feely stuff as it might be perceived, are not so connected. But in terms of being in tune with our bodies, do you see any difference in the genders there?
The ability
Or
to
the
feel.
ability to feel and know what's going on in our bodies?
Oh, I love that question. I think I have seen a lot of the men that come to me are wonderfully conscious and aware of their emotional state. They may not be aware as to how that their thinking may be impacting not only their bodies, but how they're being perceived in the world, how they're showing up, how they are um, creating boundaries with their team members, how they're leading in a way that creates safety and security. And so sometimes what I've seen is more often than not, men will look from more a clinical perspective and the traditional allopathic route of, oh, I have this, and this, and let me talk about my ailments, versus being able to say, okay, well, what are my ailments trying to tell me about me? I mean, I have seen so often in almost 9 years of coaching high achievers, the power of how we co-create reality.
Mhm.
And especially with high achievers who tend not to give themselves too many breaks.
Mhm.
More often than not, I have seen this scenario manifest of the push, the work, the hustle, the hustle, the hustle. And oh my gosh, I'm suddenly sick,
Crash.
Yeah.
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 sick.
Yeah.
And like, oh, there's a cold or a flu or a thing, and suddenly there's that, and it's not listening to the body, and the body's been like, I've been trying to communicate that you need rest, that you might need to take a little bit more time to sleep or meditate or just take a little bit more time to yourself. And subconsciously there's a programming going on that is what I call one of the limiting beliefs, Trojan horses of our subconscious mind, which is
Mhm.
familiarity. And if high performing leaders, more often males, but I've seen it a lot with high achieving females as well, they will go into the familiar programming of the hustle, just work harder, just push through. And then they'll get to the point where their bodies will say like, I'm done. I need to take a
Yeah.
break.
Yeah.
And it normally hits at the worst time during a very busy season. But what if we had listened to the body and what it was saying all along?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, nobody has time to, I can't remember how they put it now.
It-
Nobody has time to take time off. Everybody's busy, but when everybody has time to spend a week in hospital, because that's just, when the body breaks down, that's what
Yeah.
you got to do is what you got to do. But all
Like
of
we
a sudden
don't
you
have
can find the
time.
time.
We don't have time for an hour's exercise a day, but we have a week to
Yeah.
spend in hospital when we
Yeah.
have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, a personal example, I still have to listen to my body. I was coming off of my book launch tour, and I was doing this speaking tour. I went to New York and Colorado, and I was 4 or 5 months pregnant with my daughter. And suddenly my body was like, I'm feeling a little fatigued. And well, my body manifested borderline anemia with my pregnancy. And I've never had that with either of my previous 2 pregnancies.
Mm.
So this experience of like, oh, my body is saying slow down. And I
Mhm.
had worked with a coach who works with energy, and she said, I'm just letting you know your body is saying slow down. And I was like, I have a book launch and a speaking tour coming. Like, those are not going to get canceled. But by slowing down, it allowed me to reevaluate. Like, I completed the tour, I completed the book launch, and it went wonderful. Bestseller, got to be pregnant with my daughter, looking up at the New York Times billboard. And it was such a full circle moment, considering that the last time my company had been on a billboard was from my buyout. So
Yeah.
it was very much this full circle completion moment. And then I took the preceding weeks to just like, I was down. I was in the corner of my couch. I was so tired. And it allowed me to reevaluate and realign. So my
Mhm.
body was actually out of alignment with circulating, because look at anemia, circulation
Mhm, mhm,
of the
mhm.
blood, circulating the right amount of cash flow for our consulting agency. And I had to look and take a hard look at our offerings, and I
Mhm.
had to take a hard look at what we were doing at the time, which at the time it was a done for you end-to-end podcast booking company that I started back in 2021 in addition to my coaching company. And that looking at that, and I looked at the data from our clients, and what they wanted more of was they wanted more of my coaching. They wanted more of our facilitation, and didn't want to they saw the expense of working with us as an agency and their team members having to be trained in this modality. So I saw this relationship of, oh, well, this downtime is actually allowing me to take that visionary seat as CEO and be able to look at what's not working and the role and the functions that are not working inside of my business, so that we can actually optimize it and make it better. But
Yeah.
in order to do that, I had to slow down.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so often entrepreneurs are so stuck in the day to day and in the do
Do to
that
do.
they don't take that time to take that higher level visionary seat and slow down and see like what's really working and what's not. And when we looked at the model of what was not, I let go of 85% of my team. We downsized our offers to just 2 offers. And suddenly we started closing like crazy. And right before I gave birth, and suddenly I felt so much better. I had so much less to manage and
Mhm.
my body felt lighter. And when my body felt lighter, I said, oh, okay, that's what I was missing. I was missing the alignment piece.
Yeah.
And things started to circulate and I started to feel energy again so that I could exercise and move my body. Because I'm very big on natural childbirth. And I was like, if I'm so tired, I can't exercise. Like I
Yeah.
have to be ready for the
Yeah.
sport of childbirth.
It's the sport, the Olympics. I love it.
And we've been talking about, I guess, your body feeling emotionally lighter after you were able to figure out some of the better way to go. But congratulations are in order. You're also physically lighter, and it's only, I think you said 11 weeks or something like that since
11
your
weeks.
last
Yeah.
delivery, and here you are delivering a podcast in fine form.
With an
Congratulations.
11-week-old baby.
Exactly.
11
Amazing.
weeks, almost 8 and almost 4-year-old. So
A very busy household is what that
it
means,
is a
right?
very busy household. And then we also lovingly have my mom who I call our teenager, who moved with us to
Uh-huh.
Texas. And I think that that's something when my dad passed in 2021, it's so interesting to see the relationship dynamics and how everything shifted
Indeed.
holistically and choosing to have a multi-generational household. It's a game changer
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. 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 No, we've heard that. There's a podcast we did actually with a guy who talks about looking after his mom and how uh, it changed him
Yeah.
because of the unconditional love that he discovered that he had and was giving. So just an aside, if you were interested in somebody else talking about the shift in the dynamic from being the child to being
Mm.
the parent of the parent, so to speak, which I
Mm-hmm.
guess is what you're saying, parenting both ends. But I want to go back to just the process of how you would help work with somebody to help them address whatever limiting
Mm-hmm.
beliefs, whatever the source of those limiting beliefs might be, to deal or use the cues from the body to
Mm.
then move to crown yourself. How do you, we want to get to the crown. How do you
Yeah.
crown yourself?
So first we look at language. Your
Yeah.
language dictates your reality. So like what are the things that you're saying and what are the beliefs, thoughts, feelings underneath what you're saying?
Mhm.
And not just in what your body is saying, but in like what you're saying about your business, what you're saying about your relationship. How are you with your partner? Like how are you relating to money? I mean,
Mhm.
this is a huge one that I see with business owners because the relationship that they have to money tends to be very bulimic in a
Mhm.
way where they get cash flow in and then it just all goes out to OPEX, to team, to everyone else, where it's not really nourishing and sustaining
Mhm.
and growing inside. So I look at what is the relationship that there's through the language that they're saying. What is the body communicating? What is their voice sounding like? Do they sound excited? Do they change their vocal tone when they are speaking about their spouse or they're speaking about their business partner or they're speaking about their boss?
Mhm.
What is their body saying? Are they rolling their shoulders forward in deflation and fear? Are they sitting back confident and maybe a little prideful? Where is that the physiology? Because communication um, isn't just what the language that you say. In fact, that's
Yeah.
only 8%. It's
Mhm.
38% is vocal tone and 55% is your physiological presence.
Mhm.
And physiological presence also comes in energy. Are they energized? Like where are those moments in conversation where I'm noticing that they are energized? And what are those life-giving things that they're talking about? And what are
Mhm.
those things that are draining? And you
Mhm.
can hear it when someone speaks to you. If you say, "Oh, yeah," and then my husband and da 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 da, and you feel the difference in the body, and you literally see them like sink back and, oh, okay, well, that's a relationship that then gets to be addressed
Mhm.
because that's not. I mean, especially if you want to stay with your your husband or your
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah.
So or same with kids. I mean, you can't divorce yourself necessarily from kids. It's very frowned
No.
upon.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
so okay, you're struggling with your 3-year-old. Okay, and then you're talking. If I hear that they're speaking about their 3-year-old and I see their body tensing up, okay, or their body just feels deflated. Like I had one client whose child was deeply struggling with sleep issues and has been for years. And just she wasn't having enough energy in general. And so part of life is energy management. Part of high performance is energy management. And if
Indeed.
you're literally not getting enough sleep, you are depleted of a good portion. I look forward to 3 years from now when I have like a not newborn sleep. It's like, oh my gosh, I'll skyrocket.
Yeah.
but but that experience of energy management, she didn't have it because she just didn't have the mental capacity because she was out of energy from lack of sleep.
Mhm.
And so we looked at how she was relating to the problem. Because when we look at the relationships to the problem, a lot of times there are problems that we think that we need subconsciously
Mhm.
because of these Trojan horses. And what the 3 Trojan horses are, the first one is safety and familiarity. So I look at where are
Mhm.
they feeling safe or in a familiar pattern.
Mhm.
And if familiar, it also stems from family. So I look at their family relationships. How did they relate to their mother? How did they relate to their father? And I look at that from the perspective, not from a clinical or psychological perspective, like a therapist, but I look at it from like, what is the relationship that they have that is impacting the goals that they want to achieve? And if they shifted that relationship of how they relate to the person, maybe it's establishing a boundary, maybe it's communicating your desires to just support yourself in backing yourself and what you want so that you're not necessarily looking at mommy and daddy for approval when you're 34. That there, what is that relationship? How are they relating to the problem?
Mhm.
Then I look at control. Where are they trying to control their circumstances? Where are they holding on to tension in their bodies? Where are they trying to control their relationships, control outcomes in their business? Where are they forcing and not just actually being in a space of power? Because force is actually the opposite of power.
Right.
Mhm.
And then the third one is one of the trickiest ones. I look at what is their social circle,
Mhm.
because the third one is a tricky one because this is where you get approval for mediocrity. This is
Mm.
where you get
Mhm. Mhm.
approval for trying. Oh, I tried to start the business. And then you get to associate with many other people who try to do this thing. Oh, I tried to lose the weight. And oh yeah, I tried to lose the weight too. Or my favorite is, you did, so you look amazing as you are, or you're doing great. But meanwhile, your body's like, no, I don't feel amazing as I am.
Mhm.
So you get validation for the third one. You get recognition for the third one. And so because you're getting validation and recognition for the problem, sometimes that causes people to stay stuck in the problem.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when we
Own
can look
it.
at these these Trojan horses, these limiting beliefs, and then move through, it, we use breath work, we use timeline therapy, we use neurolinguistic programming, which is uh, really looking at the language of how they're languaging their circumstances. And if you think of what language is, it gauges your reality.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
the language that you use is literally shaping how you are relating to that experience. So I
Mhm.
have to pay the bills. You can feel the deflation from the body. You can feel the deflation
Yep.
in like giving away your power to this other entity. And I gave a talk at a college once all about ruling your body specifically. And I said, well, you have to, who had to come to school today? And everyone raised their hands. And I said, well, who forced you? And they're like, oh, well, one kid was like, my mom. And I was like, okay. So I said, even if she, and we reject this, but even if she held a gun to your head, you still had a choice. And one of my favorite quotes, and this is one that I cited in my TED talk, is Viktor Frankl. And he said, between stimulus and response, there's a gap.
Yeah.
And
Base.
you
Yeah.
that gap is in your freedom to choose. And that is where your freedom lies. And
Mm.
so you either can choose a different path. The choice, it's not to say that the other choice, the alternative choice, is something that you would like more often than not. In the case of the kid with going to college, he had to wake up early, and his mom was like, wake up, let's get up early. And if he had chosen to sleep in, she probably would have nagged him, which wouldn't have been something that he would have liked. She may have kicked him out of the house, another consequence of the choice. But at all times, we have a choice as to how we relate to the problem, as to how we relate to any circumstance. And so when we can listen to our language, is it one of choice? Is it one of causality? Versus is it being at the effect of the problem? And if we're at the effect of the problem, then we can't find any solutions, and then we're a victim. And we get stuck in the drama triangle of being the victim of our circumstances. But if we actually become the cause, we can become the creator of our own reality. So I look at all of these pieces as to where is the client deflecting their power. For example, I had one client who, very successful entrepreneur, who was struggling with his divorce. And his divorce happened a decade ago. And I said, and he was struggling with relating to his ex-wife, and he still felt guilt and shame for where she was in her life. And I said, well, did you, in integrity through your divorce, operate with integrity to have a win-win solution? And he said, yes. And did she receive, some support from you? And he was like, yes. And I said, okay, so you did the best that you could with the resources that you had available. How much of your ownership are you now how much of her ownership are you now trying to take? And he said, what? And I said, well, you're only allowed to take 100% ownership. You can't take 10% from the other person. And I see this with so many good-hearted, service-oriented people where they try to take somebody else's ownership for the problem.
Yeah.
And you have to let the other person have their percentage of ownership. So for example, when I staged my father's intervention in 2016, I said, here's my boundary. You drink again, we don't have a relationship. You get sober, we have a relationship. He continued drinking for a time while also navigating the sobriety resources that I gave him. But for that time, we didn't have a relationship. And one of my most proudest moments was 4 months before he passed. He said, Kimmy, I'm 4 years sober now. And he had actually stayed 4 years sober. But it wouldn't have come had I taken his percentage of ownership, which is codependency.
Yeah. Yeah.
It only came from me standing and claiming my power and saying, here's my boundary, here's my castle wall. If he would like to cross it and enter into being in relationship with me, which I consider becoming into my queendom, then that means here are the parameters.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to pick up on that actually, because you mentioned, I don't know where you're going with this.
No, just so powerful.
Yeah,
Really
very
insightful.
powerful. But something you mentioned earlier about control, and now you've spoken control. You've now spoken about queendom and power and so on. What part does ego play in all of this? Can you get to the point where you get too much, where people then, no, I'm the king, I'm the queen, it's all about me kind of thing? What part do you see ego play, and how do you help people manage that?
Yeah, good question.
Oh, that is such a good question, because ego definitely comes into play with excuses. And that's where we have to look at humility. And I see ego with the labeling of blame. Oh, he's a narcissist. And if
That's such a popular word now.
It's such a popular word. And honestly, I mean, I think clinically there's maybe 2% of the population that are actual clinically narcissists versus I'm like, if every ex-boyfriend was a narcissist, maybe you might want to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
So I think we have to look at having humility and coming from a perception of service.
Yeah.
So where I see ego come in is when it becomes all about the self and self-aggrandizing. And versus how can your story be of service?
Yeah.
And ultimately you feel the difference in your body.
Yeah.
And you feel the difference when you read someone's post who's accomplished great things and is coming from a place of service. And sometimes it's okay, I see those accomplishments and it's bringing up my shadow. of, oh, I don't feel I'm worthy. Oh, I don't feel I can do it. Oh, they're doing it so much better than me. And that's our ego too. Because the ego likes to swing the pendulum from I'm all that and amazing to I'm nothing and not enough.
Yeah.
And when we look at that pendulum swing, if we're swinging to either side, we want to ride that line in alignment right in the middle. And honestly, that is like the valley. That is the valley between the two shadows of ego death. Because if you smash yourself up to each side, if you smash yourself up against I'm amazing and all that, you're going to be putting yourself up on a pedestal. And when you put yourself on a pedestal, it is hard. It is a hard fall when you land on your butt.
Yeah.
Because a pedestal is a very shaky surface.
Yeah.
Like I love going to museums and you see those, beautiful busts up on a statue and it's a toddler, just 2 fingers, could knock it over.
Yeah.
Versus, the other side of the pendulum of the I'm not enough, the doubt, the fear, like that's also ego.
Yeah.
And a lot of times where I see this come into play with high achievers and leaders is when they put past successes of past identities of who they have been and what they have achieved up on a pedestal, so that's where their ego is aiming at, and they're back to down here because they've had those hits. Typically, they'll come to me after they've had the ego smashing hits, where they are in a space of humility.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they're putting those past identities up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And that's not a starting point either, because that's almost like if you were to look at all the versions of you running a marathon. And there are times that you're going to be crossing that finish line. You're going to be at mile 26 and you're watching all those versions of you run the marathon. However, that doesn't mean that you're actually getting back in the marathon. You're not at the starting point. You can only start from where you are right now.
So much to digest. I mean, I'm conscious of time, but we could just keep talking forever. What have we not touched on that you really wanted to share with the audience? As if, maybe if there's one thing you take away from this or one thing you think about doing, what would that be?
I have a very simple principle that I encourage people to just play with. I've adopted it as my life belief. I play with it, test it on, try it on like a new outfit, see if it fits you. But it's this: that which is conscious manifests happily. That which is unconscious manifests unhappily. So when you look at something that is manifesting unhappily, you can look at, okay, how am I relating to this problem? And what is it that now my unconscious mind, because the unconscious mind, it represses and suppresses in order to keep us safe. Because, oh my gosh, if we had to face everything, every childhood issue that we faced when we were a kid, in that moment, we would explode. Like it would be too much. It'd be overwhelming for our nervous system. So it represses and suppresses until you're ready to process it. And so when something unconscious presents itself, when a problem presents itself, I like to start with gratitude, actually, and saying, thank you. Thank you for thinking, unconscious mind, that I can handle this, that I can heal this. What is the deeper thing that I need to learn, heal? What is the belief that I need to shift that has been running in the background of my life that is now no longer serving me?
Yeah.
And then when you can look at it from that perspective, it gives you agency, not control. It gives you agency to be a creator in the next phase of how you want to do life, business, and relationships.
Yeah. Amazing. And I love that reminder of, the Viktor Frankl quote that there is that space in between the stimulus and our response. And the more we own that space and make a choice in that space, the more we own our power. Really love the way you linked what you're saying. And in that space, we could say that's where you get to put the crown back on.
That's where you put the crown on it, or you don't. So either, you can choose to put the crown on and choose the high road, or you don't. Like there's a great book series that I love, my kids love. It's called The What Would Danny Do? and it's a choose your own adventure. And throughout the pages, you have an opportunity, like to come to a choice. Does he choose to yell at his mom, or does he choose to take the high road? Does he choose to, create a tantrum? Does he choose to take a deep breath? Like each one of these, and it shows kids the power to choose. And just in reading it myself as a grown up, like I'm seeing, okay, there's this moment where I have the power to choose. And then there's this moment, like just yesterday, to give you a very raw and real example, I was processing some very deep feelings, postpartum hormones. And I suddenly remembered, I just sat there and I was in that space where I had had a big emotional release. And I said, I want my daughter to see me stand up and move through this. And like, how do I want my daughter to see me? And I said, I want her to see resilience. And resilience isn't avoidance of emotions. Resilience is acceptance of emotions, and feelings are a part of the process. They're a part of our human experience.
Moving through them, yeah.
So accepting that these big feelings come, and we have a saying in our house that big feelings are totally okay. We just call it big feelings. They're not bad. They're not wrong. They're not something to be shamed. They're just big feelings. And we accept that the big feelings come, and then we also accept that they can pass, and that there are choices that we can take. So the choice that I said is, I looked at my husband. I said, you need to take her. I need to go exercise. And he was like, great. Amazing. Did 45 minutes on the treadmill, came back. I was a changed woman. Like I was back to this queen. So it can happen like that, but it also comes with training. I will say that took years of mastery, because from my childhood, that wasn't how I grew up. I grew up in a very reactive household. And if you grew up in a space where there was trauma, if there was addiction, if there was abuse in some form, if you grew up in that space, it does take time to retrain your actual biological nervous system to move from a sympathetic space into having the variability of being able to move from a sympathetic state, whereas the fight, flight, freeze, which you need. It's not that that's bad. You need that to achieve your goals, but you need that to go after the thing, to be motivated. You need a sympathetic nervous system. And you also need to rest and digest. You also need to have the variability to go back into the rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system, and the flow from that. And that takes training. You can do that through breath work, through Pilates, through yoga, to just train your parasympathetic nervous system to activate so that you can have that versatility and variability.
And it's that intentionality about realizing there are two different systems, and one is how we'll react. The other one, we need to be more intentional about kicking it into action and having it help us put our crown back on.
That's right.
Amazing. Really enjoyed this. As I said, we're on the hour. Usually we would have finished a long time ago, but we're just so into this conversation. Very inspiring, great tips and techniques about how we can take control of our narrative, take control of our lives. And I think very relevant for this world that we're living in, with so much fake and inauthentic and noise and stuff going on. How can we own us? And I love that phrase, put your crown back on, crown yourself. So
as we wrap, how can people want to find out more? How can they find out more? How can they get more of Kimberly?
If you love this episode, then you can head on over to crownyourself.com/podcast and subscribe for the Crown Yourself podcast. We release one episode a week. Now we are moving into 2 episodes as well. But that is where you can get some amazing guests. You can have more tips just like this to really activate those strategies to live a life of holistic success and sustainability with the power of having your crown back on.
Yeah, love it. Amazing.
Wonderful. Well, it's been great, and now our listeners know how to find you. But Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a great episode. So much to take away from it. People to reflect on and think about their crown. Think about how do I get that crown in place and keep it in there, keep it up there. So thank you to our listeners around the world. We say thanks for joining us, being with us again, and maybe see you next time. But for now, it's a wrap, and it's bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Habits podcast. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, take our free relationship skills quiz at the4habits.com/skills quiz to start improving your relationships today. Hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.